It is day one of the Idaho special session. It's underway, and very quickly this morning there was a lot of energy in the building. Protesters took to the State House steps hours before lawmakers officially started the session, and then a large group ended up inside chanting loudly outside the House chamber. The big topic of conversation: masks and social distancing. Pictures and videos from throughout the day show most of the general public at the State House did not utilize either. No masks, no social distancing. Joe Paris is standing by outside the State House, where most lawmakers have headed home for the day. But Joe, what an eventful day there.
Well, this was a lot of action even before we got onto the House floor at 10 o'clock this morning. And Kim, really leading up to the special session, a conversation was about, will there be a mask mandate inside of the Capitol? Will they have some type of social distancing rule? And regardless of what you talk about leading up to today, we did not see either of those things. Now, that was a real point of contention for several lawmakers. In terms of the lawmakers themselves, though, if you looked at the House floor, for example, you would see that there were some clear boards up that would actually protect certain lawmakers if they chose to, giving them really their own bubble, if I may. There was also lawmakers wearing masks. So on the House floor, and some of the representatives themselves, they were definitely taking it to the fullest extent as possible. Of course, as the House floor is set up, it would be impossible to set everybody up away 6 feet away, but they did the best they could, according to some lawmakers. Representative Jason Monks, who's the assistant majority leader in the Idaho House, he gave me his take on what it looked like specifically on the House floor.
I think we've done a pretty good job on the floor providing protections for those that want it. You know, you'll see some people with additional plexiglass containers around their desk, their floor desk, and that's great if that's what what they choose to do. You'll also see people with masks. You'll see them without. That's, to me, the beauty of this country that allows us the freedom to do those things that we want.
So in terms of what the lawmakers could control, specifically on the House floor, the Senate floor, we did see masks. We did see those clear placards, as Representative Monks referenced. But as we've shown you all afternoon, pictures and videos, protesters, almost none of them with masks and not a lot of social distance. And that was concerning to several lawmakers, including Representative Melissa Wintrow. She was set to sit on a committee at 11 o'clock this morning. That committee meeting was supposed to be in its usual spot, which is a smaller room on the lower floor of the Capitol. Because of how many people were down here and really the attention to it, there was actually a so-called compromise made to move all the proceedings to the Lincoln Auditorium. Now, inside the Lincoln Auditorium, there were some signs set up on the seats encouraging people to actually social distance from each other and wear masks. Well, they didn't do that, and because of that, Representative Wintrow, she left the committee meeting saying that she didn't feel safe there, and as a result, she actually lost her vote on an important vote. I also spoke with Representative Alana Rubel. She is the House Minority Leader, both of them weighing in on what they say an unsafe working environment.
That didn't happen. People kept sitting on the signs that were reserved for social distancing. And again, there's a couple hundred people just packed in the Lincoln Auditorium with no masks. And that just isn't safe. We've worked so hard all summer to wear masks, to keep social distancing. You know, just as the governor has really said to folks, do this to stop the spread. And now I'm in danger. It's not fair. It's not fair at all. I want to be here to represent my constituents, and it's not fair to my district that I'm placed in an unsafe working condition with no willing to compromise. This is a serious health crisis. This is not something made up. It's not a hoax. People are dying.
We should not be put in a position where we have to choose between personal safety and doing our jobs. And that is the dilemma that's been put in place for us today, where you have to choose between just not being able to represent our constituents and not being able to do our jobs and our health and possibly our lives. I think it was very unreasonable to allow this to proceed in a manner that put us in that dilemma.
And as I mentioned, Representative Wintrow excusing herself from the committee meeting because she didn't feel safe actually made a difference. There was an RS being discussed in committee about civil liabilities, and because she didn't get a vote, it ended up passing. She told me this afternoon if she would have been in there, if she was able to take her vote would have actually been the deciding factor that RS wouldn't have moved forward. Now, leading up to the special session, there was all kinds of conversations about the mask mandate and the social distancing mandate, not only in the city of Boise, but here in Ada County, mandated investigated by Central District Health. Representative Rubel, she reached out to the Attorney General's office and asked them to weigh in on if those actually applied inside the state capitol. And I'm going to read here from the Attorney General's opinion. They say, quote, "It appears that the adoption of Title 67, Chapter 16 operates to exempt the Capitol building from ordinances and certain public health orders issued by the city of Boise. However, as explained in greater detail below, the state of Idaho has not exempted itself from public health orders issued by public health districts. Therefore, the public spaces within the Capitol building are likely subject to these orders." The opinion goes on saying the public health districts and cities are legally distinct political subdivisions of the state, but under Article 3 of the Idaho Constitution, the legislature retains plenary authority over its chambers, meeting rooms, and offices, and is therefore free to make its own determination as to what safety protocols to implement, if any, for the course of its proceedings. Long story short there, Kim, it sounds like, according to the Attorney General, that in the public spaces, inside the Capitol Rotunda, in the hallways, there should be a mask mandate. There should be social distancing. Regardless of the opinion, though, that's not what we saw today.
And that's part of what those protesters were upset about, Joe. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but that's part of what they were upset about, right?
Right. Well, there was protesters here this morning that wanted to talk about mask mandates in public health districts and emergency powers, and that was not on the agenda for the special session. So that really added to the frustration, and we saw that boil over as protesters pushed their way into the House gallery, breaking that glass as we talked about this afternoon.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. And we'll show more of that in just a minute. But first, we want to talk about a little bit more about what lawmakers were able to get done today, despite all of that commotion. They're working on about a half a dozen bills, 4 House bills dealing with limiting liability connected to the pandemic, including one that would provide heightened protection for schools, colleges, and universities related to COVID-19 transmission. In the Senate State Affairs Committee, 2 bills were introduced regarding the upcoming general election. One would change the deadlines for absentee ballots. It has been sent to the Senate's 14th order for possible amendment. Senators say they want to work with county clerks to add some language requiring specific security measures for ballots. The other bills focuses on the creation of voting centers for those who wish to vote in person in November. All 6 bills will get full hearings and allow testimony. And as Joe mentioned, there was an incident this morning before the legislature was in session. Idaho State Police say protesters shattered the front glass window of the House gallery in the 4th floor rotunda. No one was injured. And as we were watching this morning's series of events unfold, we were reminded of a 2014 event at the Idaho State House, where during a 2-month period, more than 100 protesters were arrested for misdemeanor trespassing, numerous other citations issued during the Add the Words protest during the legislative session. The majority were blocking some State House doorways while standing silent with their hands over their mouths. When they refused to leave, they were arrested. Protesters were pushing lawmakers to take up legislation that would add the words sexual orientation and gender identity to the Idaho Human Rights Acts. Most were later sentenced to community service and small fines. We reached out to Idaho State Police. They're the ones with the jurisdiction over the State House. They say no citations were issued today, despite what you saw, the unruliness there, citing that they did not believe there was any malicious intent. We also asked them what was the difference about today's events compared to those in 2014. 100 arrests versus none. A lot of you on social media asking the same question, what's the difference? We're still waiting for a response.